Hello everyone, welcome back. So in today's lesson, we're going to go over an area topic where it's called metric units area. And what this topic mainly focuses on is converting from one area to another area. So as you recall, we've learned how to convert, say, 1 meter into centimeters, right? We know that 1 meter is equal to 100 centimeters. Now what this topic will focus on is converting different units of the areas. So for example, if they ask you to convert 1 centimeter squared into something millimeter squared, how would we do that? Okay, so just to give you a brief description, what you can think of is this. So we know that 1 centimeter squared is basically, you can think of it as a square. 1 centimeter squared is basically 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter, right? Hence the area is 1 centimeter squared. Now how do you convert this to millimeter squared? Well, what you can do is you convert the length of each side into millimeters. So we know that 1 centimeter is equal to 10 millimeters. Well, I hope you guys know that. And this will be 10 millimeters, right? So then how would you work out the area of this square? Remember, the area of this square should be the same as the area of this square because we're just writing it in different units. So what is 10 times 10? 100, right? So 1 centimeter squared is equal to 100 millimeters squared. And say if they want you to convert 1 meter squared into, say, something centimeter squared, how would we do that? Well, we can first start by drawing a square. So 1 meter squared is 1 meter by 1 meter, right? So if we want to write this into centimeters, how would we do that? So I draw another square, write the units in centimeters. 1 meter is 100 centimeters. 1 meter is 100 centimeters. So what is 100 times 100? Well, that's just 10,000, right? So that's the idea behind how to convert 1 unit of area to another unit of area. And if you refer to this tab here, it says 1 centimeter squared is equal to 100 millimeters squared. 1 meter squared is equal to 10,000 centimeters squared, and so on. So how they did these questions is basically through this square method. Now what you can do is you can either choose to memorize this, which I don't really recommend. I rather prefer you guys do it this way, because this way you don't need to memorize anything. The only thing you need to know is how to convert from centimeters to millimeters. But you can use this as well. To change to a larger unit, you have to divide. So going from square centimeters to square meters, you've got to divide by 10,000. Going from square meters to hectares, you got to divide by 10,000. And on the contrary, if you change to a smaller unit, you got to multiply. So it's the same as this. If you got to change from meters to centimeters, you got to multiply, right? So changing from hectares to square meters, you got to multiply by 10,000. Change from square meters to square centimeters, you've got to multiply by 10,000. All right, so let's just do a few examples. So let's say A. Question 1, right? It says convert to square meters. So 80,000 centimeters squared converted to square meters. So if you refer to this, it says square centimeters to square meters, you got to divide by 10,000. So that's equal to 80,000 divided by 10,000 square meters, right? So what's 80,000 divided by 10,000? It's 8. So it's 8 square meters. Okay, so that's how you do A. Let's do question 8. Question 1, question 8. Convert to square meters. So 900 centimeters squared is how many square meters? Well, if you see here, to convert from square centimeters to square meters, you just divide by 10,000. So you basically do the same as question 1 here. So that's equal to 900 divided by 10,000 square meters. So what does this equal to? Well, this should equal to, let's see, 0.09 square meters. All right, so basically you can just refer to this when it comes to doing these questions, but I also strongly recommend that that you try to do these questions without referring to this, because in the exam they're not going to tell you this. They're going to give you these questions and you have to do it by yourself. Okay, so I'm going to try to do some of these questions by myself. Okay, so let's just take a look at question 10, for example. Question 10 is convert to hectares. So 200,000 square meters is equal to how many hectares? Okay, so we know that 1 hectare is equal to what? 10,000 square meters, right? So then how many hectares is equal to 200,000 square meters? How would we do this? So like I said, you can just use the cross method. You just multiply 200,000 by the 1 divided by 10,000. So this is me trying to do the question without referring to this, because in the exam, they will not give you this. You have to try and do it yourself. So let's just do 200,000 times 1 divided by 10,000. So if you want to use the calculator, you can. So 200,000 times 1 divided by 10,000, which is equal to 20. So then the answer is 20, right? Should be quite easy. All right, now the next question says, let's take a look at question 17. Convert to square meters. So 6 hectare is equal to how many square meters, right? All right, so we know that 1 hectare is equal to 10,000 square meters, right? So then how many hectare is equal to, how many square meters is equal to 6 hectare, right? All right, so we know that we just have to multiply this number by 6, right? If 1 hectare has 10,000, 6 hectare should have 60,000, right? So that's your answer. Let's do a slightly the harder one. 0.07 a hectare. Oops. 24. 0.07 hectare is equal to how many square meters, right? So if 1 hectare is equal to 10,000 square meters, then 0.07 hectare is equal to how many square meters? All right, so like I said before, you can just use the cross multiplication method. You can just do 0.07 times by 10,000 and then divide it by 1, right? So just type that into your calculator. So then 0.07 times 10,000 divided by 1, right? In this case, 700. So your answer is 700. Can use a black pen. 700. All right. So that should be pretty easy, right? All right. Let's take a look at a different question. Question 25. 25 says, convert to square centimeters. So 3 square meters is equal to how many square centimeters, right? All right. So if you think about it this way, 1 meter squared is equal to how many square centimeters? So if you think of a 1 by 1 square, right? 1 meter by 1 meter. If you got to convert this into centimeters, what should that be? So we know that 1 meter is equal to 100 centimeters, right? And this should be 100 centimeters. So these two squares are equivalent. So 1 meter squared is equal to how many centimeters squared? What's 100 times 100? So that should be 10,000. If 1 meter squared is equal to 10,000 centimeters squared, then how many centimeters squared is 3 square meters? You just times it by 10,000, right? So there should be 30,000 square centimeters. Okay, so that's how I'll do this question. So like I said, try not to rely on this, because if you rely on this, you're going to struggle in the exam. In the exam, they're not going to tell you this. So if you're just going to look at this for every single question, then you will have trouble in the exam. All right, let's do a different question. So let's do, say, part B. So part B, let's just take a look at question 11, okay? 0.5 km squared is equal to how many meters squared, right? All right, so So let's just draw the square. So 1 km squared. Just start with 1 km squared is equal to how many meters squared? Alright, so 1 km squared is basically 1 km by 1 km, right? So if you draw this as a square, but except writing in meters, what should that be? So we know that 1 km is 1,000 meters, right? So 1,000 meters by 1,000 meters. So what is 1,000 times 1,000? That's equal to 1 million. So 6 zeros. If 1 km squared is equal to 1 million meters squared, how many meters squared is 0.5 km squared? So like I said earlier, we can just use the cross method, right? So I'm just going to do it here. So I can just do this. 0.5 times by 1 million divided by 1. So what do I get? That's 500,000. Well, that's pretty big. So then the answer is 500,000 square meters, right? So that's how you would do that question. All right. Now let's take a look at question 20. So that was question 11. Question 20. Question 20 says 15,000 millimeters squared is equal to how many centimeters squared? Okay, so this question is a little bit tricky, and the reason I'm saying it's tricky is because this is converting from something small into something big. So what I'm going to do is, rather than doing it like this, I'm going to draw a square. So I'm going to write 1 centimeter squared is equal to how many millimeters squared, because this is easier to visualize than trying to do it the other way around. Okay, so 1 centimeter squared is what? 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter, right? And if you want to write this in millimeters, what should that be? So 1 centimeter equals to 10 millimeters. This is also 10 millimeters, right? So then we know that 1 centimeter squared is equal to 100 millimeters squared, right? So if 1 centimeter squared is equal to 100 millimeters squared, then how many centimeters squared is 15,000 millimeters squared? Now, before we use the cross method, what I will do is I'll make sure to rewrite this, because at the moment we have millimeter squared on one side and centimeter squared on one side, so it doesn't match. So I'm going to swap these units around. So we have 100 millimeters squared is equal to 1 centimeter squared. Okay, so we're going to cross this out, because we want to make sure the units are all on the same side before we do the cross method. Now, if 100 millimeters squared is equals to 1 centimeter squared, how many centimeters squared is 15,000 millimeters squared? So what we can do is we just do the cross method. So the cross method is basically 15,000 times 1 divided by 100. So 15,000 times 1 divided by 100, which equals to 150. So the answer is 150. I hope that wasn't too confusing for you, because, so like I said, it's much easier to convert from something big into something small by using the triangle. Okay. All right. Now let's take a look at question C. Question C is usually quite challenging, so I'm going to go through this a bit slower. Let's just take a look at question 1. For each question, write the area that is larger. Okay, so you have 3.46 hectare or 30,000 square meters, right? Now with these questions, it's always good to try to convert from one unit to another, and I would always convert the unit that has the bigger unit. So in this case, we know that a hectare is bigger than square meters, so I'm going to convert this into square meters. Okay, so we know that 1 hectare is equal to what? 10,000 square meters. So then how many square meters is 3.46 the hectare the equal to? So you can use the cross multiplication method. So just do 3.46 multiplied by 10,000 divided by 1. Right? So you get 34600, right? Square meters. So if you still don't remember the cross method, just multiply these two numbers and then you divide it by the 1. Now the question asks you, so we know that 3.46 hectare is equal to 34,600. So which one's bigger? 34,600 square meters or 30,000 square meters? It's fairly obvious that we know that this one is the bigger one, right? Because this number is bigger than that. All right, so let's pick another question. Let's do question 9. This will be my last example. So question 9 is 350 square meters or 300,000 square centimeters. Okay, so what we should do is we got to convert from square meters to square centimeters, right? So 1 square meter is equal to how many square centimeters? So what we can do is you either have memorized the result or you can just draw the triangle. Draw the square every time. So 1 meter by 1 meter is equal to, so 1 meter is 100 centimeters. 100 centimeters. So what is 100 times 100? That's 100, so that's just 10,000, right? So 1 meter squared is 10,000 square centimeters. Then 350 square meters is equal to how many square centimeters? So you can just use, or you can use the cross method just to make it easier. Saves the explanation, but so you just do 350 multiplied by 10,000 divided by 1, which is 3.5 million. Wow, that's a big number. 3.5 million. So that's okay. Now the question becomes, so do you think it's 3.5 million square centimeters or 300,000 square centimeters? So of course it's 3.5 million. That's bigger, right? So then this number is bigger. Okay. All right. So that brings me to the end of today's lesson. So just to summarize, in today's lesson, what I explained to you is how to convert from one unit of area to another unit of area. And the best way to do this is to the best way is to just memorize the result. But if you cannot memorize the result, what I recommend is you start from the unit that's bigger, you draw a square, and then you draw another square where the units have been converted. So for example, in 1 square meter and you want to convert it to square centimeters, you draw a square that's 1 meter by 1 meter, and then you draw another square where the units are in centimeters. That's how you convert from square meters to square centimeters. Now, in this sheet, they kind of gave you this clue here, which tells you what you need to do. You times it by 10,000. You divide by 10,000 or divide by 10,000 or multiply by 10,000. Now, in the exam, they're not going to give you this, okay? So I actually recommend that you guys try to do it the square way, or at least you try to memorize the results. So if you want to memorize the results, so you can say 1 hectare equals 10,000 square meters. I think most of you probably already know this. And 1 meter squared equals to 10,000 centimeters squared. Now that one probably requires a bit of practice, but hopefully by the end of this exercise, you're able to do these questions without referring to this, okay? Because like I said earlier, in the exam, they're not going to tell you this. So if you don't have this in front of you and you become reliant on it, then you're going to get the questions wrong in the exam. All right, thank you for listening. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.